Hi you guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thanks for coming. I am in my glasses today. I'm having some eye issues. I desperately need new contacts, and I thought that's what's been bothering my eyes whenever I put them in. And I looked at my contact solution and it had expired months ago. So my eyes are really mad at me. It's a glasses day, so sorry about the glare from the ring light. I'm trying to position it so it's not as bad, but whatever. It is what it is. I feel like I've put off this video long enough, and I'm not gonna let my glasses be the reason I don't film it anymore. Today is gonna be part 3 of my Becoming a Widow series. I've been putting it off because it's kind of scary for me to film. The first 2 episodes were about the cancer story, about my husband being diagnosed, and then about his time in the hospital and his passing. I'll link those below. If you haven't seen them already, watch those first before this video, because this video will make a lot more sense if you've already know a bit about the story. And today's video is going to be more about me and some of the things that I was going through and feeling and thinking during that time. And it's been hard. It's been a therapeutic series for me, but it's also been really, really scary to really be super vulnerable and put myself out there. And if I thought the first 2 videos were scary, then this one definitely is, because that one, they were already filmed. All I had to do was edit it and post it. So this one I actually have to sit down and talk. So let's just jump right in here. To begin the story, I'm going to jump back to when his symptoms first started, which was back in January-ish of 2018. And at the time, I was about 9 months pregnant, and I was having symptoms of preeclampsia and was really stressed out and worried about that. And so when his symptoms started, I was less than enthusiastic. I was actually the opposite. I was frustrated and irritated that he had the nerve to complain to me, a 9 months pregnant woman, about being bloated or about your back hurting. And I'm like, hello, dude. Excuse me. I kind of felt like being pregnant is the end all be all, and no one else has the right to complain about anything because I am pregnant. Especially don't complain to me when I'm pregnant and suffering from similar symptoms. And I think one of the things that made me even more frustrated was when he would complain and I would research and give him solutions or tell him what to do and tell him to go see a doctor or take this or whatever, and him not doing it. So then I kind of felt like, you've lost the right to complain to me. I'm telling you what to do and you're choosing not to, so stop it. And I wish that I had listened more and had been a little bit more sympathetic to him. I was also really frustrated with him throughout the labor process and giving birth. That was another time where I just felt like the attention should be on me. And you should be caring all about me and forget about yourself for a little bit because I'm having your child. But I knew he was in pain and I knew he was suffering, and I was really trying to be sympathetic to that. So whenever he asked me if he could leave to go home and shower, at that time, that was one of the things that would help him feel a little bit of relief. He tried the hospital showers, but it just wasn't doing it for him. And we were in the hospital for a week. I had a failed induction, and then later in the week, another induction, and then Lincoln was in the NICU for 6 days. So altogether, we were in the hospital quite a bit. And the hospital showers just didn't do it for him. So he would have to go home, which was a 45-minute drive-ish. 40-minute drive. And I would get frustrated, and I would get mad, and I would get upset. More upset than mad. Just feeling alone, that I was doing it alone, and it was hard. It was hard. I wanted support. I wanted him to be able to sit next to me and hold my hand. And he did it when he could, but there was a lot of times where he couldn't, where he needed to be sitting down with his heating pack. That was another thing that gave him a little bit of relief. Or he would be showering, or he even brought his gaming laptop so that way he could play video games, and get his mind off of the situation and get his mind off of the pain. But in my perspective, as a woman who's going through labor, I was mad. When he played his games, I was mad. Because I felt like you should be here for me. If I knew then what I knew now, I don't think I would have been so upset or so mad. But, I'm only human. And I think the feelings that I have or had were natural. But it was hard. Before he was diagnosed was really, really hard, because I often just felt like he was being dramatic, but he wasn't. He was in severe pain. And other times I was sympathetic, but still feeling alone. When we got out of the hospital with Lincoln, I'm recovering from a C-section, so I have myself to take care of. I now have a newborn infant to take care of who was not breastfeeding properly. I wasn't providing them enough milk. I was worried about him keeping his sugars up because that's why he was in the NICU for so long. Trying to figure out how to supplement, how to do the little contraption they gave me to help supplement as I'm breastfeeding. And it was like a 2-person job to try to breastfeed. And it was just me, because he couldn't do it. He was there, but he couldn't help. And I was upset at times and frustrated. And I also had him to take care of. He'd gone to the doctor, gotten some medication, but it wasn't helping. He was trying to get some tests done and trying to figure this whole thing out. And I remember one night being in the kitchen giving Lincoln a bottle or heating up a bottle to give to Lincoln. And Lincoln was freaking out, and I asked Patrick to go just pick him up and hold him. And he could only hold him maybe 20 seconds before he was in near tears from the pain, saying, it hurts too much, I can't do it. So he literally couldn't help. He wanted to, but he couldn't. But we made it work, and we figured it out somehow. He ended up going back to work. He got a job at a hardware store and was working hard so that way I could take care of the baby. I was getting unemployment, getting ready to go back to work. I worked a seasonal job at the time. And so I was being able to be home with the baby while he was doing the best he could. And I remember the one day before heading off to work, he needed to take his medicine, and it was something that he was supposed to take with food. And I came into the kitchen, and he was sitting in front of the fridge door was open, and just staring to try to figure out what he could have. And he ate one grape, and he looked at me and asked if I thought that would be enough, that was all he was able to eat because it hurt too much. And there were near tears in his eyes as he's asking if that's enough because it hurts too bad. And I said, yes, I think that's enough. I think you're doing enough. it's hard to see the person you care about in so much pain, and it's hard to not be able to help. I felt so helpless, which I think is another reason I had so much frustration and anger, because I couldn't help. I couldn't do anything. I researched and we talked to doctors and we just weren't getting answers, and it was hard and it was frustrating. And unfortunately, I took out some of that frustration on him. When he was in the hospital, it was a whole new level of stress. I thought I had it hard when it was the three of us at home, but having him in the hospital was a whole other level of difficulty. Knowing that he had cancer, I immediately felt awful for everything that I had felt or said or thought in those last, 5 weeks that we had after Lincoln was born. I felt terrible. It was hard having him in the hospital. It was hard having him gone. It was hard not seeing him every day. I wasn't able to. And that was one of the hardest parts, was having my time so split. I had a newborn infant at home, and it was something that Patrick and I talked about, and he wanted me with Lincoln, and he wanted me taking care of him. And at the time, there was really bad flu going around, and so most hospitals banned minors from visiting, which is why when he was in the hospital where he went into the ER, Lincoln was not allowed in that hospital at all. But his mom was there every minute that she could. And her two sisters, Patrick's aunts, came in, and the three of them together tag teamed it and were angels to him. He was very adamant that he did not want to be alone, ever. And so they set up a schedule, and they made sure that he was never alone and that he had someone there. Some of the nurses were not as, I don't know what the right word is, but would make mistakes or overlook things or not do things totally right, which Patrick was not always in a state of mind to be able to be an advocate for himself. So it was really, really helpful to have someone there who could advocate for him and who watched the nurses do whatever they were doing and knew what was correct and what wasn't. So that was super helpful, and they were able to help him a lot, but it was really hard for me to not be one of those people. I felt very much like a failure as a wife, that I couldn't be there for him. I feel like that is a wife's job, and I felt like I shouldn't have left his side. My husband was dying of cancer in the hospital, and I would be at home, hating every minute of being home. But I had a newborn. And when I was at the hospital, I was hating the fact that I wasn't with my baby and that I was turning my baby over to people. My parents watched him a lot. Good friends watched him. I had a lot of great, loving, wonderful people who were more than happy to take him for the day. But it was hard, and I felt like a failure as a mom for not being able to take care of my baby. So no matter where I was feeling like a failure in something, and I just couldn't do it all. there was a time when I was visiting Patrick, and usually when I would go, whoever was with him would step out and go get a cup of coffee or get something to eat, or just kind of sit in the lounge and make phone calls, or just kind of decompress a little bit and have some time to themselves, because Patrick was a lot. He needed a lot. But I mean, he's a cancer patient. Of course he needs a lot. And they also wanted to give me some privacy with him, which I appreciated. And I remember one of those times, Patrick needed something, and it was something simple. It was like a drink. But he was very particular. He was always very particular about things. And his aunt was the one who was there that day, his one aunt, and he kept asking me to go get her. And I was saying, I can do it, I can do it. I can pour a drink. I can do that. I mean, I can't, flush out your tubes or any medical stuff. Not really great at dressing wounds or handling that. I just can't. I could never be a real nurse. But I can get a drink. But he was very insistent that he did not want me to do it. And he wanted me to get her. And that hurt my feelings. Not gonna lie, it hurt to have your husband say, no, I don't want you, go get her. I know he didn't intend it that way, and he apologized as he was saying it, and because he knew I would be upset by it, and he was sensitive to that fact, but he just wanted it done a certain way and knew that she knew how to do it the way that he needed, and that it would be faster and easier for her to just do it. But it hurt to hear your husband say they want someone else, they don't want you to help them. But it also hurt because I didn't know what he wanted and how he wanted it. When in the past, that was me and that was my job, and I was the one he would go to for that stuff because I was there. And I wasn't there all the time. I couldn't be there all the time, and that was really hard. I had to split my time between the two boys in my life, the two most important people in my life, at the times that they needed me the most in their lives. And I couldn't be there for either one. So the whole concept of self-care went completely out the window. If I was at the hospital, I was full on there. And if I was not at the hospital, then I was home with my baby and taking care of him. I did every single nighttime feeding. Not every single one. Sometimes for a little while, my dad kind of stepped up and said, you really need your rest. Let me take one of them for you. And I felt really bad about that and guilty for doing that because I'm his mom and I should be doing this. But I have great parents. I stayed with my parents from the day that Patrick went into the ER. They watched Lincoln when I first went to the ER to see Patrick there. And when I got home, they insisted that I spend the night with them, that they didn't want me to be alone. So I just went back to the apartment real quick to grab a few things, and I'd stayed there since. During the beginning of his time in the hospital, the plan was always for him to leave the hospital to get treatment, to get chemo. The hospital was to really get him healthy enough to be able to handle the chemo. Because he had lost so much weight, he was having an issue with fluids and the bloating, and he needed to get a feeding tube and all of those things. But the plan was to get all that taken care of and either get him into like a step-down rehabilitation center, which was what the doctors in the hospital suggested and preferred, However, his family and I kind of came up with a plan of, well, they get the credit for it, really, not me. They came up with a plan of him going to his mom's house and staying with her. Lincoln and I would remain at my parents', and he would go to her house, and she would be there, and one of his aunts would always be there. They both have their own homes and lives in other states, but were willing to kind of take turns putting that aside to be there for him and to be there for their sister, his mother. They were very, very selfless to do that. So that way there was always two people to help out and to be there and to act as his nurses and give him that 24-hour constant care. They were more than willing to do it. It was their idea to do it. It was hard for me, again, because I felt like as a wife, that's my job. That's my job. But I couldn't do that job. And they understood that. And they never made me feel bad about it. They always supported me and made me tried to make me feel like I was doing a good job. No matter how hard I was on myself, they always supported me, which was nice and appreciated. One of the reasons we liked that idea was that Lincoln and I would be able to go there and spend nights there, and see him. And at a step down, you're kind of subject to administration and their rules, and when you're at home, you have more flexibility and able to have friends and family visit and have more comforts. So that was the plan. We were never able to enact that plan. He was never able to leave the hospital. He passed the point of being able to have chemo. And that was really hard. And it was hard because it all happened so fast. From the time he went into the ER to the time he passed, it was 4 weeks. Exactly. He went in on a Tuesday, and 4 weeks later he passed away on a Tuesday. And so, we're just wrapping our minds around one thing when everything would change. And we had a lot of other stressors happening at the time. I mentioned in the first video, I think it was one of the first two videos, that during his first, I mentioned during the first video that his first ER visit, when his sugars dropped and he went to the ER via ambulance, he was signed up for Medicaid then, and he was approved for that, which was a huge blessing to us because we didn't have to pay for anything of his hospital care. However, unknown to me, that he had to kind of reapply. He had to select, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but he had to select a certain type of Medicaid, I think it was, and apply for that. It was already yes, you are approved, but to keep going, you have to finalize this and make it official or something like that. He got the paperwork in the mail. And at the time I wasn't living at the apartment, and found this letter in the mail a little bit too late. There was a deadline, and it said if it passed this deadline, you would lose it, and you're no longer going to be covered on Medicaid. And I found it after that deadline, and that was a big stressor for me. And I spent a lot of time on phones and trying to figure this all out, because at this point he's been in Cooper for weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe even, I think it was the 2-week mark. But I knew the bills were stacking up heavily and that I would never be able to pay them without any insurance help. There's just no way. So that was a huge stressor. On top of that, our bank account, our joint bank account was hacked. And I needed to handle that. If I remember right, the bank just closed the account for us. I think they're the ones that caught on to it. But I had to then reopen the account. He was the main account holder. So I was trying to handle all of that. They needed signatures on a signature card. And from working in a bank, I understand kind of what that means. And it was stressful to kind of manage that. And they wanted, because he was in the hospital and unable to come to the bank to sign the signature card, she was going to let me take it with me and have him sign it at the bank, but we needed to get it notarized. And for some reason, the hospital didn't have a notary. They wouldn't and it was just this whole to-do. It turned out that he did pass away, and I actually had a different bank account with the bank that I worked at. That account was more convenient for me to have, so I ended up just closing the account that we reopened. So the fact that I never got his signature turned out to not be so much of a problem. Another stressor during this entire time was I was primary president of my ward. I've mentioned it before, but I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and our wards are congregations. And everyone kind of has what we call a calling. It's kind of like a job in the church. They're not paid. They are voluntary, but you don't really volunteer for them. You are called to them. Heavenly Father calls you to them. And so at the time, I was primary president, which meant I was in charge of all of the children. The second and third hour of church, the children would go to primary. From 18 months to 3 years old is nursery, and then from 3 to turning 12 is primary. And so I was responsible for all of those kids and all of their teachers and a music leader and a pianist and all of the things. And it's a really stressful calling. It's a very difficult calling, but it was my favorite calling I've ever had, but it was very, very stressful. And I was already stressed out about having a baby and trying to maneuver my calling with an infant. But when Patrick was diagnosed, my bishop made a note to pull me aside and say, hey, you have more than enough happening in your life. And if you need a break, you don't have to stay in this calling. You don't have to do this. He said that he didn't want me to have more on my plate. He didn't want to add more to me, more stress. And this is something that I could cut out and he could call someone else. But I told him no. I told him I would let him know when I needed a break and if I did, but I needed those kids. I needed those kids. Those kids made my day every Sunday. They made my week. They were always so excited to see Lincoln. He has the biggest fan club. And they knew a little bit what I was going through, some of the older kids, and they just showed me love, just unconditional love. There's nothing better than kids. Like, I totally understand why Jesus was always like, let the little children come to me, because they are so sweet and so innocent. And as difficult as it was, they helped carry me through that time. Certain friends and family were offering support, wanted to offer financial support to me. And for a while, I just kind of kept saying, no, I didn't want to take their money. I didn't want to be that person. But when it was imminent, when his death was imminent, I decided to go ahead and set up the GoFundMe just because so many people had asked me how they can help financially. And I received so much help there. People were so kind and so generous. People who I went to high school with, who I was just Facebook friends. We were never really friends in high school. Never really more than just acquaintances. I was very shy in high school, and I think I tend to come off as standoffish or stuck up, but really just shy. So I didn't have a ton of friends, but so I was really shocked at so many people who donated to me to help. And some of the amounts that they were willing to give was very just overwhelming. I didn't realize just how expensive funerals were. And I never imagined that at the age of 28, I would be planning a funeral. And without those people and those donations, I could have never done it. Okay, so I think I have cried enough on camera. I did better this time. I've started filming this 2 other times, 2 separate days. Got interrupted for one reason or another. But I feel like out of all the 3 times I tried to film this is when I kept it together the most. So I'm proud of myself. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about me and my story and being willing to listen this long. And to anyone and everyone who was in my life during that time, thank you for standing by me. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting him and helping him. Thank you to everyone who came to visit him. Thank you to everyone who prayed for him, or prayed for me, or prayed for Lincoln. Thank you to everyone who donated. Your support was huge. Your love was huge. And it was certainly felt, and it helped carry me through. Like I said, thank you guys for watching. I will post episode 4 relatively soon, hopefully. I won't put it off as long as I did this one. And I think that one will be about the funeral. Planning the funeral, the day of, and then trying to start my life again. Eventually, I will be doing a Q&A to help kind of fill in any blanks. If you have any questions at all, please ask me. You can ask it in a comment here on YouTube. You can ask it in a comment on Facebook. You can send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. If you have my personal number, text me. Any question you have, I want to know. Or any question you think that someone else would want to know. Like something I didn't cover, something that needs clarification, whatever it is, please ask me. I would like to do a Q&A and kind of fill in the gaps, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that I'm forgetting. But again, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't done so already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.